Hi, and welcome to the Language in Academic Context discussion panel. This is the workshop made by Alejandro Silva, Pablo Giraldo, and Alejandro Gamboa. Our poem was the poem For Annie. During this poem, we found 11 different words that we didn't know the meaning. First is the word breast, which is the glandular organs of a woman located on the chest. Second is shorns, that is the when you cut the hair or wool with shears, with scissors. Third is compostly, that is when you do something very calmly, very not preoccupied. Fourth is beholder, that is someone that sees, that observes, and gives awareness of things. Five is quenchness, that is to extinguish or put out a fire or some flames. Six is foolishly, that is doing something in a foolish way, in a stupid way. Seventh is gloomy, that is a person that is not happy and is not having a very good judgment. Eighth it is slumber, that is a state where you rest or sleep very calmly and with no problems. Nine is bluntly, that is a name given to a blunt person in the family. Tenth is the word combined, which is mixing fonts from two different positions and mixing them from one to another. 11th is cursed, which is to touch or kiss someone with love, with being gentle, with carefulness. Okay, fourth is the story that the poem is telling, that we had to rewrite it in prose. This poem, called For Annie, is the story of a dead man, a man that is dying in his deathbed, which is very sick, but the poem starts with him telling that he's not sick, he regained his living, his meaning of life. But that's false because he's still dying. Through the poem develops this character Annie, that's the main character, the title of the poem. The only character we know the name actually, because the man called the narrator, we never know the name. Annie appears and he starts telling that she is the light of her life, the one who brings her peace and gains him with passion, with love, with comfortability. But he always expressed this feeling with talking in a way of his last breath, because he, as I said before, he's dying, but he wants to express and thank as much to Annie for being right there. Fifth is the setting of the poem. As I said before, the poem doesn't clarify any setting or place or time. But as we read through the poem, we can see that he is always in his bed, inferring that he's in his house, in his room, in his bed, or in a kind of hospital having the visit of Annie. But as I said before, there is no exact place or time. Six is the main characters. The story only tells us about two characters, the narrator and Annie. They don't give us a literal physical or psychological description, but we can infer it and analyze it through reading the poem. Okay, first is the narrator. As I said before, there is no physical or psychological description, but we can analyze it. The physical description is that he is a sick man with many diseases that he's fighting for it, and that's where the psychological description comes in, because he's fighting his diseases to survive, to write this poem, this letter for Annie, and the motivation he has is that she reads it. Also, we can infer that he is a very passionate, very peaceful, very loving man, because in all the poem, well, the letter, He expresses his love for Annie and his passion, his thinkings, and devote for her. Okay, then is Annie, which we have a, in quotes, more detailed description of her because the narrator, in the letter he's writing for her, he describes her, like saying that she is a very beautiful girl with lightning eyes. That's the only physical description we have, but psychological we can infer it and quote it a little more, because the narrator says that he's a religious woman because she prays for to the angels for the narrator to get better. Also that he's a very careless woman that loves him and shows many love for him to get better.
The principal conflict on the poem is that the narrator was sick and have to fight with a disease after the time he was getting better, and this conflict transforms into a love conflict because he was insecure about losing the love of Annie because of his death or because she goes. The speaker of the poem is the protagonist, the narrator, that he was sick, so his emotions were sad because at first because he probably dies because of this disease, and his emotion of love because Annie give him peace and a comfortable love to him, so he fell in love with her. This showing that his emotions were love and sadness. The theme of this poem is hopeful love and insecure love. This can be seen in the poem because, like for example, the insecure love when is because the narrator was insecure about the love of Annie because he was scared about losing her because of his death or because she's gone. On the other side, we have the hopeful love that can be seen because the love of Annie and the warmness of the love of Annie brings a hope to narrator in this difficult moment. This poem is conformed by metaphors and symbols. This is because the narrator explains what he feels during the story with metaphors and symbols. Like for example, he used the living to explain or is the symbolism of that the life is a disease that consumes when the time pass by. This symbolism or this metaphor is one of the most evident during the poem. In the poem, different sensory details can be shown, like for example, at first, when the narrator explains how he feels, can be a clear example of the character's intention on the poem. Sound devices can be seen on the story because it's really easy to understand the story. This is a clear example of the rhythm of the story because it's have a really good understanding for the reader. This can be explaining or showing first because the rhythm between the lines is very constant and very good developed, and second because the rhythm or this rhythm makes the better the understanding for the reader so of the story. So it's better the understanding of what the story wants to tell to the public. The principal symbol of the story that can be evident on the story are the eyes of Annie. This because it represents to the narrator the peace and the hope for the bad moment he's passing through. This showing that the love of Annie brings warmness and peace to the narrator during his disease. First of all, this poem make us feel first sad because of the situation that the narrator have to pass through with the disease and fighting with the death and all. What he feel with the love of Annie and the insecure of losing it, and happy because how he feels with the love of Annie, how he feel comfortable, and how this love brings him hopeful and peace to this bad moment. Basically, the poem is disturbing and beautiful because it shows how the vision of the persons when they are passing through a bad moment, such as a disease, or when they're sick, and how the feelings can change this vision, and how can make the person change, especially the happy feelings like such as love and much others, and how this story change with sadness, happiness, and love. This also is so beautiful, but also so disturbing. Comparing this poem with other ones, we can see how this poem basically, yes, it's a romantic poem, but starts really sad. Normally, or in some cases, the other poems start happy and end sad, or they are all happy or they are all sad. But no one has, a part of this one, have a start with a sad moment, and the story is really good because it's about a disease that can provocate the death of the protagonist, and how the love and his feelings make him stronger to fight with the disease and bring him and uh, peace and good feelings during this bad moment. We have to create a transmedia. We will use a song because it's more easier to explain the feelings that the narrator and the story transmit with a song, because we can create a letter that shows uh, more equal the feelings that the poem transmit, and such as the ones of the disease, of sadness, and the love with happiness on a song. So we can create a song that explains more equal, like the essential of the poem, but in a song. Okay, so with this transmedia to show the emotional impact of the poem, and using a transmedia element, we will make the letter of the song as a dedication to Annie, to show the love and the feelings of the narrator. And also on the video of the song we can put like we can make a symbol of sadness, so we can show the other part of the story of the disease, and all what the narrator passed through the time.
Hello, this poster is created by artificial intelligence. Of the poster for Annie written by Edgar Allan Poe. In this poster, we can see the two main characters. Annie, which is a woman um, who is being written in the poem and it's dedicated to, and the narrator, which does not have a name. In this poster, we can see the most significant characteristics of both of them, which are that Annie is a pretty woman which has kind of a blue and green eyes, which is brown with brown hair, and is a beautiful woman. And also we can see how the narrator is is writing the poem in a paper, and just for the feelings he has for Annie. Also, this poster includes main details like the paper, which is how poems were written on the time which this poem was written, and also the main thing about it is how we can see how it represented in the poster that the narrator is thinking about Annie during during their reading part, and also how their narrator is expressing his feelings for her in this poem, which includes various types. For example, he started mentioning that he was sick and that he couldn't live without her, but just after that, he starts explaining how did that illness help him to make this poem and make finally express the feelings the narrator has for Annie on a poem which could be rated as a poem of love and sadness, seeing depending on the point of view you are watching the poem.